Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to join these two in marriage. Do you agree to take each other as a lawfully wedded spouse? Will you start fights every day and blame each other for your problems? Will you keep a list of faults? Will you bring up past arguments and become defensive when confronted? Do you promise to make your partner, rely on your partner to make you happy and give him the silent treatment when you're angry for as long as you both shall live? Now, nobody's going to say that I do to that, right? And when we enter into a marriage or a committed relationship, we're not expecting it to be miserable, right? We're hopeful, there's feelings of love, and we desire to have the best relationship that we possibly can, and we expect it to be that way. But unless you've had the perfect role models of how relationships should be, and you've got excellent communication skills developed, and you fully understand yourself, and you know how to solve problems, it won't take too long, and you are going to run into some issues and some conflicts. It's how it is. It's how marriages work, and that's how we grow. But there are ways to make this marriage and this relationship, intimate relationship that you have, be the best that it could be and be what you hoped for it to be, instead of it becoming a miserable day after day conflicts. So it just takes learning a few more skills, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look at just a few different areas that can really impact your communication and the closeness and intimacy that you have with that person closest to you. The first one is going to be about attachment styles. Attachment styles affect relationships. The next one is how communication styles impact your level of intimacy. We're going to talk about easy steps to resolve conflicts, and then ways to make your marriage or your committed relationship really work. So we're going to start with attachment styles. Attachment styles, a thought of it was developed by psychologist Don Bowlby and further enhanced by Mary Ainsworth. And it's the idea that how you were treated, as an infant, whether you were really taken care of and felt secure and safe, or whether you were neglected, or your needs were getting met maybe sometimes, but not always, that can really affect and start forming the patterns about how you believe about relationships and those behaviors and how you treat other people in those relationships. So we're going to look at 4 different types of attachment styles. The first one is the one that we all desire to have, and we all can eventually attain, and that's called secure attachment. People with secure attachments, they can be close with another person, be honest and open about how they're feeling and what they're thinking, and they can also have their own space, have some time apart. They tend to believe pretty good about themselves and feel very positively about their partners. They can trust their partners. So these are all positive qualities, and in that relationship that they can have with the other person then can feel secure. There's trust there. And so this is the strongest type of attachment style and the healthiest that we can have. And then the other 3 are very common, but are a little bit more challenging. The next one is called anxious or preoccupied attachment. People with this style, they worry. They worry that the other person isn't going to be there for them. They sometimes need a lot of reassurances. They maybe need to be told that they're valued or that they're loved. Quite frequently, they might want to connect with their partner several times throughout the day just to have that reassurance. So they're not really comfortable really thinking that that person values them. And sometimes they rely a little bit too much on the other person's thoughts of them. So, their own self-worth comes from that instead of from themselves. Sometimes they're not necessarily needy and needing a lot of communication all the time and that reassurance. Sometimes they can be very controlling, and that's a way they can make sure that their partner's not going to leave them. They try to dominate and control. And you can see how this attachment style really destroys intimacy. You can't really build trust with this kind of person because they're going to avoid problems and conflicts. They're maybe not going to be honest. And it puts a lot of burden on that relationship. The next one is dismissive avoidant. And dismissive avoidant attachment styles, they care more about being independent. They don't put a lot of value, I guess, on close, intimate relationships. They're not going to want to talk about their feelings or get too close. They're going to keep people a little bit at a distance. It's just not as important to them. They also are probably going to have a hard time asking for help for another person. So you can see how this is difficult in a relationship because their partners are going to probably feel pretty unimportant, not very valuable. And that's going to create a lot of problems in trying to develop a closeness and an intimacy in a relationship. The next one is a combination. It's called fearful avoidant or disorganized. This kind of attachment style, people who have this, they want to be close, they want to open up and talk, but then they get fearful. They're afraid, what if they get hurt or rejected? And so there's this drawing close, and then there's pushing their partner away. That leaves them feeling a little insecure and unsure about their relationship, and it also affects their partner that way too. They don't know where this person's at. So you can imagine the intimacy is also harmed and damaged by that, because your partner, each one of them, are not really sure where they stand with each other. The good news is that anybody, if you have one of these not so great attachment styles, you can develop a secure attachment. You can do it by going through therapy and gaining some skills, but by becoming more aware of how you relate and how you behave and maybe why and where that comes from, that awareness can really help you make some changes in how you treat your partner. And then also, forming a good friendship with somebody who has a secure attachment. Just learning that and learning how to develop that trust and to talk openly can really make a big difference in helping you develop secure attachment. The next big area of intimacy is going to be communication. You hear a lot about that. That's one of the big problems, is we don't communicate, or there's problems in communication. So that's the next thing we are going to be talking about. There are 4 basic types of communication. The first one is passive communication. People people have all different kinds, you kind of mix and match, but for the most part, you tend to lean towards one. People with passive communication style, they tend to defer. They think other people's thoughts or opinions are more important than their own. So, if somebody asks them a question, they're like, oh yeah, I don't know. They're not going to, want to get into any kind of conflicts or anything like that. So an example of this would be, let's say there's a couple, they're married or they're just, really, really close, and they have a little extra money, and they're both tired. They don't want to make dinner tonight, so they thought, hey, one of them said, let's go out and grab something to eat. And they might talk to the passive communicator and say, what do you feel like eating tonight? A passive communicator will likely respond, anything's fine. Anything you want would be good. I'm okay with anything. Even if they did have, they're really craving something, they're just probably not going to say they feel like the other person's more important. So they're going to let that go. Now, you might think, well, hey, that's great. You can always get your way if you have a partner who's a passive communicator. But the truth is, it really harms intimacy. It's like, the person's not really there. They're not really showing up. They're not really being honest about what their needs and their wants are. And so in a marriage or a really close relationship, the partner can feel like they're kind of alone in it. That's just not that really closeness that they would maybe really crave, because the person's just not really showing up. The next style, number 2, is the opposite. That's the aggressive communicators. I'm sure we've all known a few of these. An aggressive communicator feels quite the opposite. They feel like their wants, their desires, their thoughts, their needs are more important than the other person. So this kind of person is probably going to interrupt, talk over you, talk louder than you, maybe not really want to listen to your thoughts or opinions. They maybe just don't care. They don't think that what you think and what you feel is as important as what they're feeling or they're experiencing. So an example of this, take the same scenario. So you've got these 2 people, they don't want to cook dinner, they want to go out to eat. An aggressive communicator is not even going to ask. They're just going to say, oh, I'm hungry, let's get pizza. They're not even going to consider what their partner wants. And if their partner does say, oh, I'm really kind of tired of pizza, let's get tacos instead. An aggressive communicator will probably say, yeah, I want pizza, we're getting pizza. And that's how it's going to be. Not a lot of intimacy in that kind of relationship with somebody who's an aggressive communicator, is there? The other person's always going to feel like they're the loser. They can't really be open, they can't talk openly because they're not going to be valued and they're not going to be heard. So there's going to be a really low level of intimacy in that type of relationship. The third one is a combination. It's passive-aggressive. Now, passive-aggressive communicators, they'll express their needs and wants, but it's not direct. They'll do it indirectly. So the other person kind of gets the feeling that maybe they know what they want, but they're not really totally sure. And if you don't, choose what a passive-aggressive person wants, you're going to pay for it somehow. Sometimes you're going to feel like, oh, I made a mistake here, or they're not happy. Even if they don't tell you directly, you can just kind of feel it. So the situation of going out to eat again, The passive-aggressive communicator will be the same as a passive and say, yeah, whatever you want is going to be just fine. The other person says, well, let's go get pizza. A passive-aggressive communicator might use sarcasm and say, oh yeah, that's a surprise, you wanting pizza again. Just enough to let the other person know they're not happy about it. And if the other, their partner says, well, no, we can get something else, it's likely a passive-aggressive communicator will say, no, pizza's fine. But then when the pizza comes, it's going to be cold or soggy. They're going to complain about it, and they're going to somehow punish or let the other person know, indirectly that they're angry. And you can see how this also then creates a very low level of intimacy. You can't really trust the person you're with. You don't really know where you stand. It's not really open, not directly. And so, that creates a problem. The really only way to really have good, strong intimacy in a close relationship, in a marriage or in that intimate relationship, is assertive communication. When both partners are willing to talk openly and honestly and express their thoughts and their feelings, and then also take the time to listen and really hear what their partner has to say and hear their thoughts and feelings and consider that. The assertive communicators are willing to problem solve and find compromises and find ways to work it out because they're being open about what they want, about what they think, and they're also taking in from their partner also what they want and think. So the highest level of intimacy in communication is working on being an assertive communicator. And let's be honest, if you really want to have a good love life, a really good sex life, it's not just about physical intimacy. The best lovers are those that can also have really good emotional intimacy with their partner. Now, it's inevitable that even if you are having these other skills and everything's going really well, that you're going to run into some conflicts. Every relationship is going to have them. You're not always going to agree on everything together at all. So what we'd like to talk about next is some simple ways, some easy steps to not let those conflicts and those fights get out of hand. The first thing is you have to visualize if you're having a fight or argument with your partner is to put yourself on the same side of the table. Instead of being on the opposites, fighting to try to get your way. Think about, okay, we're sitting together, let's lay out the problem in front of us, we're on the same side of the table, and let's figure it out together. So there's a few simple steps that you can take. The first one is figure out what the problem really is. What is really causing the conflict? So now take some time to understand and hear your partner's thoughts and concerns. The second thing is to openly share your feelings and needs and also own your part in the problem. It's easy to blame and criticize the other person and not really take responsibility to, how did you make it worse? Did you react? Did you get offended or something like that? And so own your part and what you did to make the problem worse. And then really, really be open about what you're feeling and what you're thinking. The next one is to listen, truly listen to your partner's point of view. And then take that time to understand your partner's perspective. Now, it doesn't mean you're always going to agree, but really think, okay, from their perspective, their experiences, if I'm going to think about what they're feeling and what their life has been like and how they view this, really kind of get into their shoes and really imagine that. And so then validate that. It doesn't mean you agree, but it just means that you understand their perspective and where they're coming from. The next thing is work together to try to come up with some different solutions. Brainstorm, come up with all different ideas and think of how can we solve this issue? How can we solve this problem? And really, really explore that. And then select one. So then pick one of them, after you looked them all over, pick one that you want to try. And then put the solution into action. Take a look at it and think, okay, what steps do we need to take? Let's give this one a try and see how it works. And then it's important to then check on the progress and make the adjustments. So maybe things are working and then something happens and things change and it's not working so much anymore. And you might have to find another solution or go back to that brainstorming list and maybe try something else, and that's okay. And then lastly, if conflicts keep occurring and you keep having trouble and you're just can't get over something, be willing to seek help. There are a lot of people that can give some guidance and another perspective. So it's important to be open to that and be humble in the relationship to be able to work on that. The last thing that we're going to address is is how to make your marriage and those intimate relationships even better. There is a researcher, it's the Gottman Institute, it's out in Seattle. They created this love lab, they called it, for decades. They have been watching couples. They have these couples go into their lab and they attach electrodes on them, and they monitor their physical responses. They watch them. They observe their behavior and record. And they've been doing this for so many years that they can predict, I believe it's with a 96% accuracy, whether a couple is going to make it or not, if they're going to be successful or not, just by behavior and what they're seeing, and whether or not somebody gets overwhelmed or flooded or gets upset or emotionally reactive, or how they treat each other. Are they rude or contemptuous towards each other? Do they criticize? All those things, they kind of look. So as we're looking at this, there's things that you can do that you can stop doing, but the Love Lab also looked at what do these successful couples, the marriages and those relationships that really thrive, that are really good, what are some of the things that they do? And let's talk about that to make your marriage even better. The first thing that you need to do is to get to know each other really well. It's important because we sometimes think, I already know you. We've lived together for a long time. I've known each other for a long time. That we have not really much to talk about anymore. But that's not true, because every day we're experiencing new experiences. We're meeting new people. We're hearing new information. Our opinions and thoughts might change. We're having different ideas, and so we're growing and we're changing as people. So it's important to not just think we've heard it all and said it all, but to engage with your partner and ask questions and really get to know them. Revisit, childhood stories or memories, or, what happened today. And so take that time. So couples that are really successful and have good intimacy are willing to admit that I don't know you all the time. So let's really take that time to get to know each other better. And the next thing is to show love and admiration. When you really value your partner and respect them, you're less likely to fight and disagree. You overlook some of their faults because you're really showing that you value them and you care about them. The next one after that is to be there for each other. Sometimes your partner might, kind of get a little bid for affection, or maybe they want humor, or they just want a little attention. Respond to that. Don't just ignore them and be too busy, but take the time to be there for them when you can tell that your partner's looking for a little bit more. And then also learn to listen and share the power. This can be a difficult thing because we like our own opinions, we like our own thoughts, we like to be right, we think our way is better, and sometimes it's hard to be influenced by our partner. We'd rather be the one influencing them. And so it's important to actually share the power, and hate to say it, but in general, not completely across the board, but in general, men tend to have a little bit harder time with this. They tend to not want to be influenced by their wife or their partner, and they like to maybe call the shots. So this is a little bit harder for them, but it's really important if you want that close intimacy and that the best relationship you could have is make sure that you do share the power and accept influence from your partner. And the next one is to solve problems together. Not all problems are solvable. Some are not going to be solvable. There's going to be problems and situations that you're never going to agree on, and you can still have a good marriage and still have a good relationship. You just have to learn to accept, compromise, or in spite of or with those differences. But most problems in our relationships are solvable. And so work together to solve those solvable problems. And you can do this in just a few easy steps. So first, start the conversation gently. Not, hey, I'm mad about this. We need to talk. But sit down with, and say, hey, can we talk about this? Something's been bothering me. We need to work this out. So start gently. The next thing is to learn to apologize and accept apologies. When you're working through problems, know that no person is always right in every argument. And comfort and support each other. This is you're here not to be each other's enemies. You're here to try to work together. And then find a compromise. There's usually something, give or take, could be taking turns, but usually there's a way to find a solution if you really take the time to explore. And lastly, be understanding of each other's faults. We all have them. Nobody's perfect. So try not to focus on the faults and the weaknesses, but focus on the strengths and the things that you really love about your partner. And then, we'll talk just briefly about dealing with those difficult problems. Remember, there's going to be some things. It could be something, can you imagine a couple getting married and one wants children, one does not? That is not a solvable problem. You can't just, have half a child or something. Or maybe have a dog instead. There's things that you can do, but somebody is going to maybe not get their way. And it can be an issue, but it doesn't have to be to still have a healthy relationship. Somebody maybe has dreams of living in Florida. Another person, their partner hates the heat. That's not a solvable problem, is it? But if you really explore the dreams and those hopes and aspirations behind those problems, like where it's coming from, you can still understand each other. You can still have a close, intimate relationship, even if you can't solve every problem in your marriage. Lastly, create a meaningful life together. So, that whether it's holidays or other kind of celebrations or things that you do together as a couple or as a family, and embrace those and create all kinds of meanings, create memories together. That's just vital. That's something that just kind of keeps the glue and holds the family together. So if you apply all these different things we talked about, examining your attachment style, working on being more secure, about developing assertive communication skills, and being open and honest with your relationship, learning how to problem solve together and manage those conflicts in a healthy way, and then develop all those beautiful things in your relationship that can make your relationship grow. You can have a meaningful and deep, intimate relationship with your partner, one that you've always dreamed of. And that's kind of what we really want, isn't it? We, deep down, to be able to be really connected and feel safe and secure with somebody that we love.